The home of jump racing. This is where the magic happens. Feel like a Cheltenham favourite with Paddy Power.
Hello everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. As you can see, Ruby Walsh alongside me and we're back in the studio. Ruby, how are you? Are you fit enough?
I'm not sure. I'm definitely not buzzing.
You wouldn't describe yourself as sparkling?
Hard to say. I'd say it's hard to describe myself as sparkling right now.
Okay, well I suppose it probably depends on whether or not you're in Grade 1 company here. That'll be for the viewers to decide. Obviously I'm talking about Shishkin.
I would have said you were talking about Nick Luck if I was in Grade 1 company. But,
Oh, that was below the belt. That was just below the belt. Anyway, we were talking about the news about Shishkin because sadly earlier this week, Nicky Henderson, his trainer, announced that he would not be running in the Tingle Creek at Sandown on Saturday week, which means that he wouldn't be taking on one of Willie Mullins' powerful three, Chacan-Bassois, Energamen or Allaho. Nicky Henderson told the Racing Post, there's nothing wrong, but Nico de Boinville, who's his rider, and I feel he's not quite there. Shishkin's never been a brilliant workhorse and that makes life difficult in assessing him. I'd love to have been able to work him on grass. The best thing for the horse is not to get chased. I'd have put the gun to his head too much, I fear. He means by trying to get to the Tingle Creek. Now, what do you make of all of this, Ruby? He's said that the horse is fit enough. He said he's not 100%. He said he's not sparkling. Now, these things mean different things to different people. How do you read this?
I'd say he just can't tune him to the level he wants to run him in a Tingle Creek, a Grade 1, in against Grade 1 horses where you would need to be a little readier than you probably would be to win the Desert Orchid. Mind you, he could face Nube Negra there, so he'll need to be ready for that, but that's not for another couple of weeks. Or maybe that, you know, back at the Schlur a fortnight ago, everybody else had a fortnight's less work done as well. So, yeah, the Tingle Creek could probably take more winning than a Schlur, and he'd need to be readier for it. And I'd say he's just not really lighting Nicky's fire by the sounds of it.
Okay, so your reading is that he potentially could have run in a Holden Gold Cup or a Schlur. It's just that he's not ready for a Grade 1 that might be as tough as the Tingle Creek. Do you think we might have forgotten that Grade 1s are Grade 1s and they actually take some winning outside of March and April?
Yeah, but you might have forgotten it. I'd say the trainers most certainly haven't, or people may have forgotten it, sorry, not just you. But no, I'd say the weather plays his part. I'm only thinking about Willie's and Nicky Henderson's would be the same. Like, he probably would have had 2 or 3 pieces of work done on the grass by now, or maybe more. I'm not sure. I'd never worked for Nicky Henderson, that they haven't got. So the weather has held everybody up. I even know in Willie's Gallop being wood chip, it's probably not as deep as it generally would be, and you have to make it deeper with machinery. But it's just the weather has held different trainers up in different ways. Neither Nicky Henderson or Willie train like Paul Nichols or even Dan Skelton on a hill, so the weather doesn't really come into their fitness, whereas the surfaces that Willie and Nicky with grass, Willie with wood chip, it does come into it. So
do you think we're going to see an impact on the big three from Willie Mullins? Are they going to get to their respective
No, we've
targets?
brought about in machinery, but having said that, Lydia, if it didn't rain and Sandown doesn't get slow, it could have an impact. Like, Willie didn't run Album Photo earlier today in Thurles. He ended up only just running Keyless Emery. He's very few entries the weekend at Fairyhouse. He's, you know, Saldier is in and Classical Dream is in. Whether he'll run or not, we'll know in the morning. But we need rain, and it's as simple as that. And that could be the same for Sandown by the next Saturday. There's no rain forecast this week. I don't know what next week is, but Sandown will need rain for Willie too.
But is this ground materially different from what they'll be facing in March and April?
No, but the horses are heavier and not as fit. It's early in the year, so when you get having raced through the winter and they're fitter and harder and leaner and lighter by March, April, so you've ground drying rather than waiting to get wet. It is, well, it'll be given the same going description, they are completely different. You'll have had a wet winter and the ground will be starting to tighten in the spring, whereas now it's been dry all summer and you're waiting for it to loosen. It is both be given good ground, but there is a difference in the two.
Should we move on to staying chasers?
Yes.
A Plutar. It's the watchword of the week. Let's have a look at a Plutar and how brilliant he was in the Betfair Chase, shall we?
I thought he was spectacular, and what I thought about him actually was that he jumped much quicker and fluenter consistently through the race than he has done in the past. You can watch him here in the back straight, and before, when he was deliberate like he was there, he can land a little bit static, but whereas Haydock last week, he always seemed to be landing and going forward. Watch when he pings this fence, he's not losing ground on the ones in front. Now their jumping does fall apart, I'll accept that, but I just was always taken by how easily a Plutard seems to be going in what was a strongly run renewal of this race, and most evident here at the fourth last. Now I know Royal Pagaille misses, but like, visually on landing, Rachel Blackmore's already trying to slow a Plutard down. He breezes by at the back of 3 out, she opens him up from the back of 2 out and he changes gears. You can see him going faster, and the same from the last home, and he jumps the last again when he lands. See him there, he's pick up, he's moving forward and quickening through the gears. I thought it was really impressive, but I was looking back thinking, why didn't he win the Gold Cup? Why is he going to win this year's Gold Cup? And I think his jumping ultimately wasn't good enough on Gold Cup Day last year.
That's exactly what I think as well. We'll examine that in closer detail in a moment. But let's look at that race in 2 different ways, first of all. Let's talk about the horses that he beat first off. So Royal Pagaille, who went forward, Bristol de Mai, who is usually brilliant in that race. The conditions a bit quicker, he's a bit older. Looking at the opposition, what do you think that A Plus Tard beat?
I think A Plus Tard beat regressing Bristol de Mai, a Grand National horse in Royal Pagaille, decent Grade 3 horses in Chatham Street Lad, but I know, and obviously Imperial Aura fell, but they're waiting patiently. He obviously didn't spark either, not this horse we saw in the King George, but each and every one of the opposition, their jumping fell apart on the second circuit. You see Chatham Street Lad here, he makes a mistake at the second fence in the back straight, rolling on, we go to the next fence, Imperial Aura is about to bite the dust, he falls, so they take him out of the equation. Watch him here, David Bass spotted a stride and the horse then changed his mind. We'll go to the next fence to keep your eye on Bristol de Mai, he's going to kick the next one out of the ground. And the pressure was on and they were up on the ante, but the only one that was rock solid was the winner, A Plus Tard. Everybody else seemed to just not spark. And watch Royal Pagaille at the last in the back straight here, Charlie Deutsch gives him a squeeze to go on, his ears are pricked, not awkward.
Yeah.
And it was always playing into A Plus Tard's hands because the rest of them were always seen to be under pressure.
Yeah, and then there was waiting patiently having his first start for Christian Williams, not jumping that well, perhaps doesn't like going left-handed. Clondor Castle, Chatham Street Lad probably ultimately didn't stay, but one of the reasons that the jumping was put under pressure, I think, was how strongly run the race was. And we can have a look at that. We can compare it with Strictly a Dancer, who ran over the same course and distance in the very next race. That was in a handicap chase. And this illustrates really the pace at which Royal Pagaille and Bristol de Mai took the field along, the pace at which A Plus Tard was comfortable on, and he managed to finish off the race really strongly.
Yeah, but this to me is what you expect. See, there's not much difference between the 2 races by the time you get to the second fence. In fact, the handicap is just marginally in front. So that's the first 3-4 furlongs of the race. But then handicappers generally have to slow it down, whereas conditions graded horses don't. They keep up the tempo in the middle of the race. And by the time they get around to the last fence, which was their first fence, you can see the conditions chase is well in front of the handicap. And it just goes further and further clear of the handicappers. First in the back straight, Royal Pagaille, Bristol de Mai. The whole field is over it for the handicappers who are only coming to it now. That's the middle part, that's the difference in the middle part of the race. Here at the fourth last, you know, A Plus Tard's the only one that's still on the bridle, but it's how much he keeps it up from here and actually goes quicker. I mean, these horses are getting close to the third last before the handicappers get to the fourth last. That's what you expect. And again, you see them here at the last. On comes A Plus Tard to jump the last, up and over. Royal Pagaille is following him. You see how far behind the handicappers here. But that is the golfing class.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And it backs up how good a performance A Plus Tard made.
Yeah, so even though you can say that all of his rivals underperformed for one reason or other, that is why that was a total Grade 1 performance from A Plus Tard.
To me anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. A superb performance. The first Irish winner of the Betfair Chase, ridden by Richard Blackmore and trained by Henry de Bromhead, of course. Let's have a look at the betting, the impact that had on the races later on in the season. A Plus Tard will be heading for the Savills Chase, the race that he won last year on his second attempt at 3 miles, was that? I think it was.
I'm trying to think last year. Yeah, he had pulled up in the... Or no, he didn't pull up. He was second at Delta Work, wasn't he, in the Grade 1 at Novice Chase at Punchestown.
So... he heads back there, so not to the King George, whereas his stable companion Minella Indo is said to be heading there. A Plus Tard went from round about 7-1 for the Gold Cup to 7-2 favourite as a result of that. And you can see the Royal Pagaille, who heads towards King George and will be fitter for the run. He's 25-1 for the King George, where I think he might have a better chance, might suit the track a bit, be suited by the track a bit better than he would in the Gold Cup. He's still got to prove himself at Grade 1 class.
And I think he'll need a lot of rain to be competitive at Kempton. He hits the ground, or looks to hit the ground hard.
Okay, back to your point about the difference between A Plus Tard and Minella Indo last season in the Gold Cup. Now, all the way through last season, you were making the point that it was a good news for A Plus Tard to move up from 2 miles to 3 because he wasn't quick enough away from his fences after he'd jumped them. But didn't that continue in the Gold Cup, actually?
It did, and it's most evident very early in the race. Now, it could have been a tactical decision too, but when the race starts, he starts between Album Photo and Lost in Translation on the run to the first fence. By the time he lands, he's 3 parts of a length behind them, and then by the time they get to the second fence, he's right behind them. We'll see it here, he's right in the blue cap, right between the Gold Cup, previous Gold Cup winner and Lost in Translation. But look how he's lost his position by the time he gets over 2 fences. And that's only by static landing. He makes a mistake of what was the first fence on the second circuit, and another mistake here early in the back straight. Meanwhile, Minella Indo is just pinging from fence to fence. Fourth last, loses another half a length to Minella Indo, down to the third last, jumps to his right and ships another half a length, and then he's always chasing. And watch here away from 2 out how Minella Indo lands and gallops, whereas A Plus Tard doesn't. See the gap slightly open there, and again from the last, A Plus Tard chased them down. But you add up all those and you get the difference. Now, I know Minella Indo was a really good winner, but A Plus Tard didn't jump well enough to beat him.
I agree with that. So, I mean, it's critical. So Minella Indo goes into a fence a certain amount ahead of A Plus Tard and emerges from it further ahead. And if you add those up, that makes the difference. It does require a horse to run at the level that Minella Indo did in order to beat A Plus Tard, even so in those circumstances.
He's a very good horse, and we saw that last weekend. But it probably shows you just how good a horse Minella Indo is as well. And look, it's fairly obvious, but they are the big 2 for the Gold Cup, there's no doubt about it. And the Minella Indo I saw in Down Royal, I don't think we'll see him again. He'll be a much leaner, fitter individual the next time people see him.
Okay, so that's the answer to one of the questions I was going to ask. Is there any chance, based on what you saw at Haydock, that A Plus Tard has got slicker, quicker away from his fences? I
thought he did. He definitely travelled better and seemed to be landing. When he gets in close, he is a fraction deliberate on landing, but nearly every horse should be. But it's just getting into a rhythm whereby he's long or spot on more often than he's tight at his jumps.
Okay. So that's A Plus Tard. I think we could agree we were impressed. I'm sure you were as well with his performance in the Betfair Chase. Looking forward to seeing him at Leopardstown over Christmas. Now, we had a horse that was on the comeback trail at Ascot as well for the Chanel Farmer 1965 Ascot Chase, and that was Lost in Translation among other horses. It was Lost in Translation who emerged as the winner. What did you make of this, Ruby?
It was tough. It was a good battle and performance, Lydia. Master Tommy Tucker had a run under his belt at Weatherby, and Sam Twiston-Davis made it a good test on him. He's found a way of getting himself from the take-off side to the landing side of fences and staying upright, Master Tommy Tucker. But
despite going into his fences about halfway up.
I know, but he still manages to get his legs out and keep himself upright. But I thought it was great to see Lost in Translation back. Obviously, he did bounce back, but you'd have to think Deputy Desai blew out.
Yeah. There was one bit where I thought, are you going to get yourself into the race? I mean, he hasn't shown form since longer back than Lost in Translation.
Definitely not. But the trip would have been sharp enough possibly for Lost in Translation, so it was good to see him go and beat a race-fit rival, and it should be onwards and upwards for him.
So that was his first really substantial bit of form since he was third to Albin Poto in his second Gold Cup. He's had a series of wind issues. That was his third surgery to correct that. They're talking about either saving him for the spring because they think he's a better horse at that time of year and needs that kind of ground, but they might be tempted to go for the King George again, a race in which he's pulled up twice. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I could see why you're tempted. Obviously, if you're the Tizzards looking at last year, you're kind of thinking, we need to write that off and forget about it as a season for them. So the horses does seem better, and again, if he likes that kind of ground, who knows what was going to be like by Christmas. So yeah, I'd say definitely, if it stays the way the weather is now, cold and dry, why wouldn't you run it?
Okay, so roll while your horse is still in form. It was great to see him back. Those were our thoughts then on the staying chasers. In the next section, we are going to get your answers to the question that we posed you about Buzz, which was, what would you like to do following his latest Ascot success? He won there over 2 mile 3.5 on Saturday. And Thurlow Thoroughbreds, I'm sure, can tell us which one is the correct answer. Would you go for the Stayers Hurdle, the Champion Hurdle, the Aintree Hurdle, or other? If the C response, explain where. Well, there's a buzz around the studio because we've got to reveal the buzz results. Let's have them. Now, first of all, can we have words? 560 votes. Do you remember this time last week? I was saying we were going for the 2,000 guys. What's going on? Have you found something else to do with your lives? Stop it. Right, so the answer is, Ruby, 56.3% reckon the Stayers Hurdle, 14.6% the Champion Hurdle, and 29.1% the Aintree Hurdle or other. Shall I give you some views from our viewers?
Please.
Liam D says, possibly go for the Champion Hurdle. They say never be afraid of one horse, but it seems everyone is. It's a jump race, anything can happen. After the mare, Honeysuckle, it's hard to see the obvious next best. Hard to think Buzz gets 3 miles, so go for it. Take the chance, says Liam. Mikey Hobbs says, not a guaranteed stayer. Ascot Long Walk Hurdle will tell more. That is Buzz's next target, over 3 miles next month. But 2.5 miles on decent ground around Aintree will be a better option for him. Ruby, what do you think?
You just run him in the Ascot, in the long walk, and you have your answer after the race.
You have, but I'm asking you now.
That's predicting the future. I mean, that's what you have a programme for. That's what the races are for. So you run him in the long walk hurdle. If he stays, you run him in the Stayers hurdle. If he doesn't, you run him in the Champion hurdle.
I don't like this practical vibe. You know,
it's just so simple. You're trying to make it complicated.
What did you make of him at Ascot?
I thought he was very good. I loved him turning in, how easily he was travelling. Nico was looking across at the opposition on the other side of the track, wondering when he'd go. Now, he's sitting here in the studio working, and Dave Nevison straight away thought, why wouldn't you go back and trip with him? And I was kind of thinking, yeah, Dave, you have a point. Why wouldn't you? We'll see what happens.
Dave Nevison.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the long walk, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back and trip.
Okay. Well, they will find out in the long walk, of course. We should say that Thurlow Thoroughbreds have been fantastic this year. They've donated a quarter of their prize money to charity. They presented Royal Marsden Hospital with a cheque for £54,000 last week. And so that's from Buzz and the likes of Ecloir as well on the flat. So many congratulations to them. Super horse, won the Cesarovic at the end of the flat season. At the end of last season over hurdles, when he was really progressive all the way through it, he ended up by running really well when second in the entry hurdle grade 1. Yeah,
to Abacadabra, and that was an improvement on his previous runs. But I just think he's a horse that's possibly improved again, even since the spring. He obviously beat Burning Victory in the Cesarovic. He didn't peg back Abacadabra here with the loose horse of Jason the Militant really helping Abacadabra up the straight. But look, obviously Bouvard Air was there, but I would think Buzz has improved since that day. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the long walk. And just because you win a Cesarovic doesn't guarantee you'll get 3 miles over hurdles.
No, I was thinking based on his previous flat form that I wasn't sure he'd stay the 2 mile 2 of the Cesarovic. Completely wrong. He was better drawn, of course, than the filly Burning Victory, but nonetheless, he only got on top inside the final furlong. But you're right, I mean, they're different tempos of races, they're different things, aren't they?
They are, but you can get a trip when you're well handicapped. One man did win the Old Hennessy. When you're really well handicapped, you can get a distance that you mightn't necessarily get in a conditions race or a championship race. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, it adds to something. It means that the gate tickets for the long walk worthwhile going to Ascot to see that race. Absolutely. Song
it
for
always
someone.
is worthwhile going to the long walk, to tell you the truth.
It generally is. The long walk is a very, very good race. Absolutely, I agree with that. Song for someone. Let's talk about Song for someone. He won this race last year. He went on to win the International. This time around, he could only finish second to Buzz, and Buzz kicked him out the way quite readily, really.
He did, and he's a little bit between the rock and the hard place. And I'd imagine they'll be plotting a similar sort of route as they tried with him last year. But he's just not quite a grade 1 horse, and not certain he gets the trip to go out much further in trip. I do think he is competent in the rock and the hard place with a really high rating, and it'll be difficult enough to win races with him.
Here's another one for you then, Goshen. Now, Goshen absolutely thumped Song for someone when he made his glorious return in the Kingwell last season. We saw what happened in the Champion Hill, just unable to handle the tight left-handed track of the old course. What did you make of his run at Ascot?
I thought it was good. I'd ride him the same way and I'd run him in the long walk as well.
Interesting. Now, he was quite a hard puller, forward-going type horse. Do you think he looks settled enough to manage 3 miles now?
I'd say, to me, he's definitely going in the right direction, and plenty of, obviously he didn't win the Triumph, but was going to win the Triumph,
yes,
but plenty of Triumph horses are stayers. Tiger Roll, even Farcla was second in the Tri-Town last week. Comanche Court was second in the Gold Cup, won an Irish National. I think Goshen is crying out to go further and be ridden the way he was ridden last week.
Interesting. Okay, that would be interesting. Obviously, the long walk the right way around as well. Right-handed track is what he needs.
Yeah, and he's 6 now as well, which is he's 5 rising 6, which will make going 3 miles a little easier. Very hard to do with a horse who's 4 rising 5 like he was last year. Much easier to go to 3 miles this year, 5 rising 6.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see what Gary Moore decides to do with Goshen. That's the hurdlers. Now it's time for Analyse This.
So last Saturday we saw 2 top-class novice hurdlers running over fences from last season. They were Bob Olinger and Bravemansgame. Obviously Bravemansgame had run at Newton Abbott. We don't have the footage to show you that. So we can analyse him in Haydock and Bob Olinger at Goran Park. And we're going to start with Bob Olinger. Now I know it was only his first run and Bravemansgame has already had a run under his belt, but I thought Bob Olinger was good at 2 of the parts of jumping. When he was spot on like he was at that fence there, he had loads of power and he was quite brave and athletic. Darragh O'Keefe asked him to jump this fence, and again he has the power to get there. But that's fine once he's long like he is here, or spot on like he had been at the previous fences. This is the 5th last. He was nimble enough, but again he's on the right stride to take off. Along with the 3rd last, I don't mind him pecking. That's downhill and at speed, but when he had to get really close to the last, it was, ooh. I know when I watched it live I was thinking, is he going to land? It just didn't feel as comfortable watching Bob Olinger really tight at the fence as you felt watching Bravemansgame, and we'll show you why now in a minute. Bravemansgame all the way through Haydock with Harry Cobden. When he asked him, he was really brave, and when he wanted him to, it was all just flowing and natural, up high in front and out through the air, very sure of what he was doing. But it was at the 4th last fence, and we'll get around to it in a few minutes, or a few seconds even. It's where Bravemansgame shows his intelligence. Harry Cobden spots a stride, the horse says no, dances on the takeoff side. You never felt watching this horse, was he going to land? You just expected him to. Whereas when you watch Bob Olinger in tight, I know I was wondering, would the landing gear be out?
Yeah, I feel pretty similar. I mean, they both achieved quite a high level of form in terms of, what they did. This was particularly special, I thought. I like what you said there about him dancing on the takeoff side, because that's exactly what he did. He's gone a different way about it, hasn't he, Bravemansgame? He's been in 2 intermediate chases against horses with much more experience, and he's dominated both of them. He
has, and went a good even gallop in both races to dominate them and put his stamina to the fore. But it's there's a certainty about his jumping and the confidence you have watching him, and that's the way Harry Cobden rides him. It just is so natural for him, and he loves jumping. I didn't think watching Bob Olinger, who I believe to be the better horse, and we'll see that at Cheltenham last year, is just quite as natural as Bravemansgame. Now maybe that's judging him against a really high standard, and it probably is. There was nothing wrong with Bob Olinger, but when you watch Bravemansgame, I think he's the better jumper.
I think he, at this stage, I think he is undoubtedly. Was there anything to do with Darragh O'Keefe being on board? Now, his main aim, his mission that day was not to stuff up, wasn't it? Well, Rachel Blackmore
is that not the aim every day for everybody?
You know what I mean. Rachel Blackmore was over in Haydock riding à Plutar. Darragh O'Keefe had this amazing ride on Bob Olinger. It's his first time over fences. The key is to get round and get round happily, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and he lines him up a little bit of light, like Henry or like Rachel would if she was riding him for Henry, and away he goes. And it was pretty good, pretty straightforward. It didn't go quick. It turned into a bit of a sprint. He was brave at the 3rd last, but even to the last fence, Darragh does slow him down. I'd like to have seen him being nimbler. I think Bravemansgame was way nimbler at the 4th last in Haydock than Bob Olinger was at the last in Goran Park.
I totally agree
Being
with
safe
that.
or not, I would like to see the horse shorten himself up and make a shape. To me, he didn't. He shortened himself up, and it was
safe, wasn't it?
I don't know. Didn't look that safe to me.
Well, I think the horse was making sure that it was safe. It didn't look as fluid and fluent as Bravemansgame.
When they were standing out or they were spot on, both horses were through the air. But just when they came to that awkward jump where you have to take a half a stride and be nimble, I thought Bravemansgame was brilliant.
Okay, we can show you a three-way split of the Goran chase that Bob Olinger won, because there were 3 2.5-mile chases run there in succession. Bob Olinger won the beginner's chase. Then we had Secret Cargo, who carried £3 less and was rated 102, ran in the next beginner's chase. And Bois de Clermont ran in the handicap over the same trip, rated 122. He's now 130, reassessed, and he carried £24 less. And this is just to illustrate how the 3 races were run comparatively.
Yeah, look, they're roughly heading through the start as close as we can get them to time. Now, obviously, in the lowest rated race, which is Secret Cargo on the bottom left of the screen, they get to the first fence quicker than Bois de Clermont or Bob Olinger. Now, Bob Olinger is the slowest of these run of these races early. Beginner's chase, they went steady. They probably went too fast in the bottom left-hand screen. Secret Cargo's race, that race does fall apart eventually. But like, it's hard to believe Secret Cargo rated 102 could be in front of Bacardi's and Bob Olinger. If he ran in the race, he most certainly wouldn't have been. But it just show you that Bob Olinger's race was quite steady, but it does turn into a dash late.
Well, we showed these 3 races this time last year when Energumen won Bob Olinger's race, and it was quite striking, this. But the striking point you've already mentioned is after the 4th last, when Ashdale Bob joins Bacardi's and Bob Olinger, and suddenly they get motoring.
Yeah, and down the hill to the 3rd last, which is quite a tricky jump. Now, obviously, Fan de Blue, Bois de Clermont, they're almost keeping tempo down the hill here now, but the further this goes, you'll see that Bob Olinger does start to pull away. Now, he's rattling at the 3rd last, and look, maybe I did say on the day that you kind of wonder why he nodded. Of course he nodded the speed they've gone. They've gone from behind to being well in front down over that fence. Ashdale Bob loses Sean O'Keefe. Bob Olinger's good at the 2nd last, but he did keep it up down the straight, Bob Olinger. But you'd expect him to. And Fan de Blue, Bois de Clermont or Secret Cargo are never going to be in the same race as Bob Olinger.
It isn't the sort of breathtaking performance that we had from Energumen this time last year, but nonetheless it is a top draw, first time out novice performance in terms of the quality of his engine. He's just got to improve his technique.
I think he does. I think he does have to improve his technique. When he's tight, when he's longer spot on, that's fine. But he didn't beat Bois de Clermont that far, as you said, not like last year.
Let's take a look now at the Ballymore from last year, because Bravemansgame met Bob Olinger there. Gaillard de Many and Bear Gills were also in the race. Let's talk about how this panned out.
Yeah, look, obviously Bravemansgame rocked along in front, but to me, even watching this race, you were always drawn to how well Bob Olinger's going. He can move Bear Gills out of the way there, but look, he's running away beside Bravemansgame down to 2 out. Harry Cobden, Bravemansgame doesn't have the gears to go with him. Bob Olinger jumped this and just opened up, and away he went. Gaillard de Many in 3rd, I think that was Kescon risk back and 4th, was it? Or 5th even.
Yes.
But Bob Olinger pings the last and scoots away to win. Gaillard keeps on. Bravemansgame just didn't have the speed, but they're probably going to end up not clashing this season, Lydia. There's a big chance they won't.
Probably not. First, let me ask you about that horse in second, Gaillard de Many. He's going chasing this season. Any idea when he might?
Whenever it rains, he's ready to rock.
He's fine?
Yeah, I wouldn't pay to go racing in Ireland at the moment. You won't see too much.
Okay. Bear Gills, Nicky Martin, his trainer, who also owns him, has said that he sustained a minor injury to a hind fetlock in early October, sustained some ligament damage. So the earliest we're going to see him in January, and she's inclined to think that they might preserve his novice chase status, so we'll probably see him over hurdles, which is a shame. He ran better than the finishing position might suggest. He just needed to brush up his jumping over hurdles. So back to the big 2 from the Ballymore. I've got a tweet before we talk about the likely path that the 2 of them might take. This is from the Market Man. Thank you very much for this. He says, people criticising Bob Olinger's jumping at Goran Park at the weekend, but watch the finish to his hurdle race there last season. He prefers to go left-handed. I remember chatting to you about this time last season. He ran against Fernie Hollow. The 2 of them ran into each other really early and streaked away down the straight. And Bob Olinger just wants to hang to his left the whole time.
Yeah, and I didn't pay much heed after then, Lydia, because he obviously went to Navant when his maiden hurl was left-handed. He won in Naas, he won in Cheltenham, all left-handed. So yeah, and we did watch that race back this morning before we did this show. But Fernie Hollow, Bob Olinger, yeah, you can see him hanging to his left all the way down. When he got tight at the last fence in Goran Park, he did go left. But look, I think he'll go to Limerick next, which is right-handed, and if he has a tendency to want to go the other way, we will see it again. We'll see it there.
Yes, it's got to be up against horses that are good enough to put you under pressure, even in a Grade 1. At this stage of the year, there are still horses that are going to different pathways to coalesce later on in the season.
Yeah, exactly. And normally you in a normal year you would have a clash at Limerick, but the only horse of Bob Olinger standard to have run so far is Bob Olinger. The rest of them haven't appeared yet. You don't have Appreciated, Gaillard de Menil, Fernie Hollow, etc. They haven't run in beginners chases yet. Normally they would be out around now, and one of those would be heading to Limerick to take him on. I can't see them taking him on first time, but if they get out in the beginners chase in the next fortnight or so, maybe they will.
So then we're looking at something like the Ladbrokes Novice Chase, which used to be the Flow Gas at the Dublin Racing Festival, and then the Marsh at the Cheltenham Festival.
You'd imagine that's the trip he go. Bob Olinger looks a good bit of quicker horse than Bravemansgame. He did last year, and certainly doesn't look to have slowed down. So I'd imagine Bob Olinger will stay at the middle distance, unless he got turned over in one of those races. And I think watching him jumping, that speed might help him. He could be rocking on the long strides rather than slowing down to go short.
So if anyway, you might go down to 2 with Bob Olinger.
I'd say you probably could.
That's very interesting. That's obviously just our projective idea of where they might go if things go well. We know the next target as well with Bravemansgame, which is the Quarto Star over 3 miles at Kempton. After that, you've had a chat with Paul Nicholls, his trainer, and he said something small en route to the Cheltenham Festival, where we assume it's the Festival Novices Chase. As it's Paul Nicholls and he said something small, I thought the Grade 1 Scilly Isles.
Yeah, it could be. If Bravemansgame turns up, it probably will be small, because who'd want to take him on? But there's not, like there used to be a novice chase in Newbury. That's gone. I can't think of one on trials there. Where is there a small novice chase from? There probably isn't, so the Scilly Isles could be the rest.
Yeah, both of those targets are now handicap chases, novice handicap chases, and the one at January at Cheltenham is a bit shorter. So anyway, those are our thoughts about Bob Olinger and Bravemansgame. Now, what have you been talking about this week? Well, Ruby, we've asked them, and the thing that everyone seems to be talking about is Run Wild Fred.
Yeah, he was good in Avon, won the Tri-Town, got a great ride from David Russell, pretty much dictated the whole show from the front. He's obviously a novice. To me, he could be a Grand National horse. He could be a horse for the not the 4-miler, the almost 4-miler,
the National
Hunt Chase. He's that kind of profile, a lot of experience. It was a good performance, and you know, in fairness to Gordon, he picked out 2, Run Wild Fred and Farclas, and they were first and second.
Yes, he's got the absolute beau ideal profile for the National Hunt Chase as a second season chaser, second in the Irish Grand National last season, proven with stamina. It's just absolutely perfect. But there is potentially a flaw, and there's been a healthy discussion on social media about this. So I like to see positive, healthy discourse. Here we go. This is between Monty and Scooby91 Racing Tips.
Right. So
Monty basically says he must go to the National Hunt Chase, and he'll be amazed if he doesn't. And Scooby says, prepare to be amazed. Monty says he won a big handicap. That's his mark gone. Might as well take advantage in the National Hunt Chase. Now, Scooby replies, and because he's used will and not would, this initially threw me, but he's basically saying you'd want to back him if you knew the owners would want to go. But they couldn't give a toss for the race previously and denied Don Poli and even War de Franc and Dunicos. And then Monty calls up a quote from Gordon Elliott saying, I thought they were 2 horses that maybe stood out among ours. Both of them could be Grand National horses, but I think the National Hunt Chase could be written all over this horse, Run Wild Fred. And Gordon has also said Michael O'Leary might have different ideas. Can you settle this between Scooby and Monty? Because Scooby finishes by saying, oh, agreed for sure, and common sense. But Gordon is not the owner, and he said that about every horse prior, which they refused to run in the race. Monty or Scooby?
You want me to settle it?
Are you with Monty or Scooby? Are you a Monty or a Scooby?
I'm a National Hunt Chase fan. For Run Wild Fred, I'd be amazed if there's not a better horse in training than him for the old RSA.
It's a diplomatic answer from a former jockey, isn't it?
To me, if you run him in the race, he might have a chance of winning.
Well, that's Gordon's argument.
Yeah.
So you're with Monty?
I'm with Gordon.
Okay, Monty. Yeah, so are we.
I have no idea who Monty is.
Yeah, okay, so Gordon, Monty, Ruby and me, we all think National Hunt Chase. Shane Fleming says about the Troy Town, there was 50 grand for the winner. Where are the British challengers? Always complaining about prize money and small runner fields. The races are there. Go and find them if you're good enough.
Are they not just waiting for the Ladbroke Trophy this weekend? Instead of going to Ireland for less money?
We haven't got enough horses to race day, week in, week out. We can't afford to send them to Ireland. You were disappointed because you were hoping that people might want to talk about San Felicien. So I'm going to let you talk about San Felicien.
I thought he was impressive in Goran Park on Saturday. I know he's a French acquisition. He won in Auteuil back in March. I thought he jumped really well, and I thought this was a decent enough contest, but I liked what I saw. Now, he's not a novice as of the 1st of December because he won back in March. He'll have to go into open company. He may well go to Limerick at Christmas for a 4-year-old hurdle, but I think some decent horses have won this race in Goran Park in the past. Galloping the Champ was second in it last year. I like what I saw, and I think this could be a horse, maybe sloppy at the last, but could end up in a Martin Pipe or a Coral Cup, and could be a real decent chaser in time to come. Who's to say he's not even better than that? But I think with the mark he could achieve off that, and maybe at Limerick at Christmas, I think he's a horse that fits that profile.
Okay, handicap Claxon. He could run into his stable companion Tehupu, whose name I could pronounce better than that, but it's really, really complicated. I looked it up. It's a Tahitian. It's a formidable wave for surfers near Tahiti, apparently.
Yeah, but he also has the same owners in Robcourse, so I'm sure they'll be able to split Saint Felicien and Tehupu.
I'm sure so. And Tehupu, approximately, would have to carry a penalty as well up against San Felicien. I like San Felicien too in his run at Goran Park. So those are your thoughts and Ruby's. The final part of this show is to look at the 2-mile hurdlers, because we're seeing this weekend the return of the last 2 champion hurdle winners, Epatante at Newcastle and Honeysuckle at Fairyhouse on Sunday. We'll start, Ruby, with Honeysuckle. This is for the Hatton's Grace, and it kind of sees coming together of the sharp 2-mile hurdlers and the horses that we might see in the latter part of the season over 3.
It is, and look, obviously Honeysuckle is now 12 from 12, and is there a horse there first time out that's going to beat her? It's hard to see it, Lydia. I think she's a fabulous racemare, as does everybody else, and I think last year her jumping was better than it ever was before, and her best round was in Leopardstown. Here she is in the Irish Champion Hurdle, just behind Petit Mouchoir, where she was competitive all the way, but her jumping was really slick. It was the first time I watched her and thought, yeah, she can hurdle. She was very good down the back straight. She jumps to the front there, just crossing the road at Leopardstown, but another good jump beside Petit Mouchoir. Second last, she's very good, and even when she slows down to jump the last under Rachel, she still wrapped the top of the hurdle. She wasn't clean and up and over it.
Because that had been the issue as a novice season, hadn't it?
So that was her best round of jumping. Now you flicked her into the champion hurdle, and her next start, Rachel lines her up much the same place, widen the track, very good at the first, and she's a real stab at the second. Comes out of Rachel's hands almost and wings it. And you're thinking, yeah, she's on the game again, holds parity at the third hurdle there when she's tight, but she does slow down to jump the next one. See her, she steadies up, pops, loses a length or two. So when she's allowed to get behind the bridle, Honeysuckle will slow down, and when she's not competitive, can be a little bit deliberate. It's still in her, but yet you've watched her at Leopardstown, so you know she can wing. And in the last in the champion hurdle, it was probably the first time she was ever ridden at the last, and she absolutely flies it and scoots away to win. Now she did go to Punchestown then, and obviously it was the end of a long season for her, and she does manage to win. But watch her at the first hurdle. Oh, guesses, surprises Rachel, Rachel ended up catching her a little bit in the mouth, has a pop at the second. She's on parity with Epatante here at the third. The two of them jump it quite well. But watch the fourth hurdle, she jams on and ends up right at the back. Now Rachel straight away then booted her into the race, made it competitive, and she slows right down to jump the last, shimmies off out to her left, jumps across in front of Sharjah, but she's just too good for them and she still wins. But she's not the easiest horse to ride at jumps, because you have to keep her competitive. She's never going to take you there. You have to make her take you there.
So if you were riding her, what would you be worried that she might do? What would you be worried?
I know what everyone's thinking. If you were riding her, she'd definitely end up on the floor. But
I wasn't reading that.
But you just have to be competitive with her, and there's a chance. You saw her at the first hurdle there in Punchestown. you want to have the revs up on her, I think. But look, Rachel Blackmore rides her and she's done nothing wrong with her. But she just can back off.
Okay, so who is the main rival on Sunday? Is it Abacadabra, who missed his intended return with some stiffness that was meant to be in the Morgiana, or is it Saldier, who seemed to get his life back on track with cheek pieces in the Galway hurdle?
Yeah, what do you call him? Sick note Saldier?
Sick note Saldier, yeah.
The sick note's gone.
You've got very long memory.
By me, yeah, elephantish. But yeah, he was good in the Galway hurdle, top weight. Patrick Mullins rode him. He went from there and won in Tipperary. But look, last year he couldn't compete with Honeysuckle. So fitness is his only chance. You have Stormy Island in the race. She was a Grade 1 winner last year, and like that's another one for another show, Lydia. But like Stormy Island is excluded from all the mares' races in Ireland until the spring because she's a Grade 1 winner. Then that's what she has to run in this. Here he is beating Jason the Militant and Durasso. Durasso's gone and won since at Navan, but him or probably Abacadabra he's the fitness, but Abacadabra is the class. We saw him earlier beating Buzz at Aintree. He fell in the champion hurdle. Then he went Cheltenham, Aintree, Punchestown was no match for Honeysuckle, but that's a hard thing to do, to go to all 3 spring festivals.
Okay, so those are the entries for the Hatton's Grace. We have the declarations for the Fighting Fifth at Newcastle on Saturday. Let's take a look at those. Epitante is there, and also Montmiral, who is the best juvenile hurdler of last season. And you've got some fitness angles there, notably So Royale. Yeah,
notably So Royale, who seems to be in great form, but I still can't help but think that if Epitante's back to her best, or Montmiral has improved enough for a 4-year-old, that they'll be taking care of So Royale. I think that's only my view. He's a very admirable horse, but I was really taken with Montmiral last year, and Epitante had an operation to try and get her back jumping the way she was.
Yes, and when we last spoke about it, Nicky Henderson has said that he hadn't schooled her yet. She had a gallop at the Ladbrokes Winter Festival Gallops Day. That was a couple of weeks ago now. Let's have a look at her jumping, because in the year that she won the champion hurdle, she was very much fated by the slickness of her jumping.
Yeah, really low, quick, top bar the hurdle all the way. Here she is in the champion hurdle. See her head? That to me is the obvious thing, because her head is starting to jerk up, or her head should be going down and low across the hurdle, whereas with Epitante you'll see her once or twice it gets up in the air. Here at the 4th last, see her head when she lands flicks up, so she's good at the 3rd last, and then she jumps into a pocket at the back of the 2nd last that she never got out of. But yeah, she was okay at the last, but those jumps when she was tight during the race, whereas in the year she won in 2020 she was taking a half a stride and her head was staying low and she was across the hurdle. She wasn't in 2021. Her head was up and she was galloping through them. She did it a couple of times at Punchestown, which she had done it though as a novice as well.
Right. In
the mare's novice hurdle. Here she's in Punchestown, watch her head was up in the air. We pick her up, that was at the 2nd, here you are, 3rd last. Again, it doesn't look comfortable.
And is that because she's uncomfortable?
She's gone tight behind. She's fine when she's spot on at the 2nd last. And here at the last hurdle you see her again, when she runs into the corner, her mouth's up, her head is up, like she doesn't want to bend her back. There's no suppleness there. So
it all fits in with what Nicky Henderson has been saying about what the problem had been.
Absolutely, and look, back in 2019 and she ran in the Dawn Run, here she is in the Christmas hurdle actually. Watch her, she gallops out through this hurdle with her head up in the air again. That was missing in 2020.
That was the first time. We were all shocked when she made that mistake in the Christmas hurdle, because she had been so good, apart from in her novice season here.
Yeah, but this was the only day as a novice, and this, we can't really see what happened there, but she did make a terrible mistake and she got beaten in that race. But she was definitely a much slicker individual in the 2019-20 season than she was in the 2020-2021.
And so you were saying, we didn't really know because Nicky Henderson hadn't schooled her over hurdles yet. We're going to find out on Saturday, aren't we, about what she's got?
Yeah, exactly. And I'd imagine she's shown the right signs or they wouldn't be going there.
Okay. And is it a bit soon for Montmiral?
It's hard for 4-year-olds. You think back, it's every once in a while a 4-year-old does win, but he has to step out now against the best in this country in open company straight away. It will be hard for him, but I thought he was a really good juvenile last year. I thought he was the best juvenile, so if there is one, it could be him.
Yeah, I think he's a huge talent. Whether it's going to be this season, I don't know. They did want to run in the Jerry Fielden, but he wasn't qualified for that intermediate hurdle. I think Stowe Royal is the one who's going to put it to him just purely through fitness, and he has a very high level of form, and we've seen him twice in great form so far this season. His owns the Christmas hurdle this season.
Exactly, but you have Not So Sleepy to go a gallop here as well, so there'll be no hiding place for anyone.
There won't. OK, well, thank you very much for all of your thoughts. We're very much looking forward to this weekend's racing. Make sure you join us for Road to Cheltenham this time next week. Also, you can check out the column, which is racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. We will see you this time next week. Thanks for watching.
The home of jump racing. This is where the magic happens. Feel like a Cheltenham favourite with Paddy Power.